Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Ovua, and here there is no perfection, just growth. Welcome to this week's theme on leadership and inner authority. Leadership today is exhausting, not because leaders are weak, but because the world is changing faster than our inner capacity to adapt. Many leaders are carrying quiet doubt, not the loud kind that announces itself, but the subtle questioning that asks, am I still relevant? Do I still have what it takes? In a world shaped by AI, rapid technology shifts, and younger generations who are fluent in today's language of technology and AI, and when leaders stop learning, we could find ourselves in quite a double bind where we lead people who are far more advanced than the leaders themselves. So leadership becomes heavy when there is a disconnect between the leader and the people that they lead. When you talk about leadership fatigue and quiet doubt, it's not an age thing. When leaders become laggards and fall behind in adopting new technology and changes, they become emotionally closed, intellectually defensive, or fearful of what they as leaders are required to know. This requires leadership boldness, the courage to step into uncharted territory, because you cannot lead from behind. This moment in history is asking leaders to learn again, to be curious again, to be humble again. You eliminate doubt in leadership not by pretending certainty, but by engaging in thought leadership. How do you engage in thought leadership? Well, you read, you study, you connect, you collaborate. As they say, iron sharpens iron. Isolation dulls leadership. So we have to collaborate with other leaders because we can't know it all. Self-mastery, which we spoke briefly about in last week's theme, is foundational to leadership. If you cannot lead yourself, how can you lead others? Self-mastery is what I call the hidden architecture of leadership. It is built on consistency, self-discipline, integrity with self. And before you ask others to commit to a vision, you need to ensure that you have the capacity to lead from the front. Because you cannot demand accountability externally if you practice excuses internally. Leadership begins with integrity towards your own goals, your own growth, and your own behavior. Self-mastery is not perfection though, it is alignment. Sometimes we overlook as leaders the most important skill, which is humility. I remember in my younger days as a manager, my senior manager at the time, whenever we did a performance review, he would always say to me, Ovua, you're too friendly with the staff. You're going to have issues when you have to discipline them. Yes, there is some truth in that. However, it is important to understand that nurturing relationships with your direct reports ensures that you understand them and you are able to match interest and skills to the work that you then expect out of them. Nobody is put in a position where they are completely out of flow. You get to recognize those that can do more and also pick out those that might need a little bit of upskilling. Humility allows you, therefore, to really understand your team dynamics better. Humility is not a weakness. It is a strength without ego. Humility cultivates empathy, compassion, psychological safety, and it allows leaders to say, I see you, I hear you. It also allowed leaders to be able to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. Teach me, show me how it is done. I may have missed something. Without humility, authority becomes control. With humility, authority becomes influence. Sometimes, as leaders, we can mistake confidence for competence. We often mistake confidence for competence because those who speak loudly, fluently, and confidently, especially those who speak with polished English, are often perceived as more intelligent or capable. But visibility is not the same as value. Some of the loudest voices create mostly empty noise. Bold ideas, no follow through, high certainty, low substance. In the age of AI, this has become even more complex. We now struggle to distinguish between AI-generated regurgitation and human-curated wisdom. Leadership today requires discernment, not just charisma. Let's talk about why good leaders reflect before they respond. Last week's theme focused a lot on self-reflection. Well, let's talk about reflection as a leadership discipline. When leaders pause to reflect, they allow themselves to see multiple perspectives, respond rather than react, and lead with wisdom rather than being defensive. I often teach leaders this principle. You cannot refute how you've made someone feel. Perception is valid even when your intention was different. Simply because I did not intend to hurt you does not mean that I did not. I cannot therefore refute your experience of hurt simply because I didn't intend to hurt you. Reflection makes space for accountability, growth, and repair. Another aspect I'd like us to touch on is what leadership taught me about myself. Leadership has taught me that I have a high patience and tolerance for unchanging behavior. I am relentless in my pursuit to teach and grow others, sometimes to the point where I invest deeply in people others may consider a lost cause. But here is what I believe. If leadership is about bringing out the best in others, then we cannot abandon people simply because the work is hard. Just as you would not give up on a delinquent child, you cannot give up on shaping culture because resistance exists. Leadership is not just a responsibility, it is a calling. Let me say that again. Leadership is not just a responsibility, it's a calling. Let's talk about influence versus control and leading by example. There is a difference between influence and control. Control demands compliance. Influence, on the other hand, inspires alignment. People do not change because they are told. They change because they observe. If your words do not align with your actions, then rather change your promises, not your people. When leaders say one thing and do another, they lose moral authority. People are always watching leaders. If you do not want your children to be drunkards, you obviously don't get drunk in their presence. So it's the same with leadership. We must eliminate the do as I say culture and lead by example. Model the behavior you want to see. Model the behavior you want to see, because when leadership relies only on control, the ship only sails when you are on board and sinks the moment you leave. We have to understand that in today's world, we are leading while still learning. Leadership is a lifelong journey of learning and unlearning, irrespective of how many degrees you might hold. The world of work is evolving. We now have to deal with hybrid work, AI integration, multi-generational teams. Leadership today is more complex than ever. The modern leader is an orchestrator, aligning diverse talents, leading through autonomy, creating feedback loops, encouraging collaboration. You do not need to know everything. You need to create conditions where learning thrives. Let's bring all this back to inner authority. Leadership does not begin with certainty. It begins with inner authority. The authority that comes from self-mastery, humility, reflection, consistent learning. You do not need to be finished to lead, but you do need to be honest, grounded, and willing. Leadership is not about being ahead of others. It's about being aligned within yourself. So, in closing, let me ask you this question. Where in your leadership are you being invited to learn again rather than defend what you already know? Thank you for listening. I am Dr. Ovua, and I hope this was learning and growth for you. Join me again next week for the theme Change, Uncertainty, and Emotional Resilience.